Afghans are so desperate to flee Afghanistan that people like Tucker Carlson, Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, the usual suspects, don't really seem to care about the fact that body parts of Afghans were found basically found on the landing gear of a flight that was leaving Kabul. I mean, it's difficult to even think about it. That's how desperate people in Afghanistan have been to flee the country now that the Taliban has taken control. Now, Fox News is going out of its way to rehash more of the white replacement conspiracy theories in regard to the Afghan refugee crisis. But before I get to what some of them have said, I do want to share some details about what I alluded to, which is that the Air Force acknowledged on Tuesday of this week that human body parts were found in the wheel well of an American military C-17 cargo plane that took flight amid chaos at Hamid Karzai International Airport in Afghanistan's capital, Kabul. Air Force officials have not said how many people died in the episode Monday, but said the service was investigating the loss of civilian lives as a crowd of Afghans desperate to escape the country after their government collapsed to the Taliban, climbed onto the plane's wings and fell from the sky after it took off. These are people who are desperate to find safety, but they're being painted as potential terrorists. So let's hear what they had to say about potentially taking in Afghan refugees here in the United States.
If history is any guide, and it's always a guide, we will see many refugees from Afghanistan resettle in our country in coming months, probably in your neighborhood. And over the next decade, that number may swell to the millions. So first we invade, and then we're invaded.
Is it really our responsibility to welcome thousands of potentially unvetted refugees from Afghanistan? All day we've heard phrases like, we promised them. Well, who did? Did you?
Yes, yeah. It is our responsibility. Given the fact that the United States decided to engage in that war for 2 decades, and we did make promises to Afghans who assisted us in that effort, we do have a responsibility to take in refugees. Yes, we do. John, I'd love to.
Yeah, well, of course, look, Fox was hardly alone in beating the war drums for Iraq and Afghanistan, but they certainly did it and kept it up year after year after year. Why would they feel at the end, after all of this, any need to actually respect those who suffered the most? When you were talking about the people in the wheel well who thought that they might be able to escape, or those who climbed onto the outside of the plane knowing that there was basically no chance whatsoever that they'd survive. Virtually everyone in the media, think about their own life experiences that they will bring to an analysis of that. I look back over my life, I've never been in anything, 1/100th as bad. But I also know that Tucker Carlson hasn't been in anything even close to that. Right. What's the worst thing that's ever happened to him? A wire from his trust fund was delayed a business day or something. But we turn to those people to know how we should think about those who were willing to almost certainly die to get away from certain death.
Right. It's incredible. I mean, I suppose we shouldn't be surprised, and I certainly am not surprised that this is the kind of commentary that we're getting from the very people, by the way, who engaged in fear-mongering about the Taliban, about Al-Qaeda in the lead up to our invasion of Afghanistan. Now they're turning around and painting those who are fleeing the brutality of those groups as these dangerous people who might not even get vetted. The vetting process for refugees is insane. I mean, there are 20 steps involved. It literally takes years and years for refugees to get accepted to the United States after that thorough vetting process. So they're painting it as, the United States, the government, they don't know what they're doing. They don't do the necessary vetting. Did we even make any promises to these people? We did. But I mean, just think about what the Trump administration did to the Kurds in Syria. I mean, the Kurds assisted us in defeating ISIS in Syria. And then after one phone call with the Turkish president, Erdogan, Donald Trump decided, yeah, we're gonna go ahead and pull troops out of this region of Syria, essentially paving the way for Turkish troops to come in and butcher the Kurds. That's what the United States did. We turned our backs on the Kurds. We're now turning our backs on Afghans who assisted us in this failed war. And I want to also play this video featuring Charlie Kirk, who is, again, using white replacement conspiracy theories to push back against the notion that we might help people in their moment of desperation, even after they helped us.
President Joe Biden's Department of Defense will accept 30,000 Afghan refugees into military installations following the collapse of Kabul. Boom. Political transformation. Let the country crumble. Do you know there's 5 million displaced people in Afghanistan now? Joe Biden is stepping up and he's allowing a flow of people from the Middle East into America. Thank you, Joe Biden. You're such a hero, you're so benevolent, you're so respectful, you're so compassionate. Do you see what's going on here? What's going on here is Joe Biden wants a couple 100,000 more Ilhan Omars to come into America to change the body politic permanently.
I gotta say, if that were true, if this were a move to bring in more Ilhan Omars, I'd co-sign to that. That would be fantastic. I think Ilhan Omar is fantastic, a progressive member of Congress who actually fights for the powerless. But she also happens to be Muslim, visibly so, and it makes people like Charlie Kirk super uncomfortable.
Well, that's why he didn't even have to explain why that would be a bad thing.
Exactly.
Why someone fleeing persecution would come to this country, grow up here in this culture, and then want to give back by being elected representative. So why is that a bad thing? You're not gonna explain? Oh God, did anyone else get like a shiver up their spine when he did that? It's really bad. I mean, there's a lot of bad people in the media on the right, but he's among the most unwatchable. Yeah, they don't care about virtually any of the arguments they're making. It's not about changing the body politic with 30,000 voters in a country of like 340 million people, or about them being terrorists, about them being unvetted. I wish they would be a little bit more honest, and only Tucker Carlson really comes that close to this. He thinks that they're dirty, he doesn't like their religion, he doesn't want them here. He doesn't consider them people like other people. We have the tapes from Media Matters. We know what he was saying about the Iraqis, about them being semi-literate primitive monkeys who don't know how to use toilet paper and forks. He's just an old school racist, that's all he is. The others will try to make it about politics or about national security or whatever, but he's fairly clear. He doesn't want them here because he thinks that they're dirty. He would, I'm sure he would expand that even farther. He is a rich, elitist white individual. The vast majority of white people he wouldn't want to be caught dead in a small room with. But definitely, if you're coming from Afghanistan, he just doesn't want you here because he hates people that don't look like him. That's it.
Yeah, look, I'm not interested in hearing anything regarding national security from anyone who justifies and defends what happened at the nation's capital on January 6th. People who think that that was totally fine, people who watch those videos of Capitol police officers being attacked the way they were, including one of them who nearly got shot by his own gun until one other person intervened and prevented it from happening. Like, people watch that video, okay? And I'm talking about Fox News pundits, I'm talking about people like Charlie Kirk, and then turned around and said like, no, that was totally fine. There was nothing wrong with what happened that day. But then they fearmonger about Afghan refugees, people who assisted the US military in Afghanistan, people who in some cases actually protected US soldiers during that 2-decade-long failure of a war. I mean, that's who these people are. Ilhan Omar responded to the garbage that we just shared with you in those videos. Let's hear what she had to say.
There are people who've helped us in this mission. There are people whose lives are going to be at risk, and we have to do everything that we can to bring them to safety. And we've done this many a times where we have evacuated people, airlifted them into safe spaces so that we can properly vet them and have them come to the United States as vetted refugees. I know a little bit about that. I know what it's like to be a child in a family scrambling for safety in a war-torn country. I know the rigorous process you go through to get vetted as a refugee. We are the most vetted people who come to the United States. The process is long, and it doesn't just end when you arrive on the shores. It continues for years until you are eligible for citizenship at 5 years of entrance. And so I really hope that people understand that there is a certain promise that we've made, and we can't break that promise. And that's not a promise that the United States made, but it's also a promise that our NATO allies have made. It's a promise that neighboring countries should fulfill, and we have to do everything to make sure that there is a multinational coalition leading this effort.
Now, unfortunately, there really isn't much of a coalition leading this effort. You look at the countries involved, the countries that have responded to calls to take in refugees. The United States might take in about 20,000. I mean, when you consider our total population, 20,000 is nothing. For anyone who's terrified of Afghan refugees, you're not even gonna notice, okay? You're not even gonna notice. And it's gonna take years and years for them to be able to get approved to resettle here in the United States. You look at a country like Iran, which yes, does share a border with Afghanistan. They've already taken in 3.5 million Afghan refugees. Jeez. That is a problem that we created as the United States. We have implemented crippling sanctions against Iran. Their people are suffering as a result in the middle of this pandemic. And they've still agreed, by the way, to take in more Afghan refugees. Now, they're hoping that they can find a way to repatriate people in a safe manner, but they've already got 3.5 million Afghan refugees in their country now, in their country that's being crushed by the United States as we speak, after they followed through on their side of the deal regarding the Iran nuclear deal that Trump, of course, then turned around and ripped up because he wanted to escalate potential war with them. So that's what the United States is doing. That's what Iran is doing. For all of the fear mongering that we hear about Iran in the US press, I mean, it's shameful. The UK has agreed to taking in 20,000 refugees over several years. The details of that are a little unclear to me, like why over several years? Like, do you take like a couple thousand the first year? I don't know, but they've agreed to 20,000. But other than that, I don't see any. You
mentioned Canada. Canada said that they were going to.
Canada, yes, is going to accept some refugees. So credit where credit is due, but it's not nearly enough, right? And then the other thing I wanted to just quickly mention is that you have like Turkey is fortifying its borders, like we're not taking anybody. The United States reached out to Uganda and was like, yo, can you guys take in some Afghan refugees? We're reaching out to Uganda? Richest country in the world is reaching out to poor countries and pushing the problem that we created onto them? I mean, it's so disgusting.
Yeah, it's absolutely sick. And I just randomly looked up like, what's the population of Mar Vista? It's 60,000. It's like, we're talking about a tiny fraction of that spread across the entirety of the United States.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. And so Iran, you said 3.5 million. I had an overestimate in my mind of their population. They're like an 80 million person country. We're many times that. It's just ridiculous. And like Joe Biden is, at least in theory, doing what they belatedly pretend they wanted to be done under Trump. They supposedly wanted to pull out of Afghanistan because Trump wanted to do that. So he's doing that. And what they've landed on is a movement, and we're seeing more and more examples of that, and it's getting more vitriolic with every passing day, is Biden was wrong to do the thing that Trump did, even though if Trump was here and the exact same thing had happened, they'd be perfectly fine with it. We definitely shouldn't bring in any refugees. And also, and I'm sure you've noticed it, the Taliban's kind of awesome in a number of different ways. They can't help themselves with their Lauren Boeberts, with them building back better. And the talking about how awesome their military strategy is. You have like people like Nicholas Fuentes just literally like listing the things conservatives agree with them for.
Right.
And so yeah, why wouldn't Tucker Carlson be against the refugees? The refugees are presumably Afghans who don't want to live under a hard right dogmatic conservative religious movement. Which neither you or I would too. We'd flee that.
Right.
He rightfully fears that they're probably more liberal, open-minded sorts of Afghans. And so he doesn't have any interest in that. We're desperately here trying to get people like him to join the 21st century. He doesn't want people like that coming into our country who are ready to be a part of that experiment. So it's, yeah, they're going to be awful. The real question is, to what extent are they going to influence Joe Biden? Are they going to scare him into lowering even the 30,000?
I'm a little concerned. I don't even think he's going to accept 30,000, right? So here's what we know so far about the numbers of refugees from Afghanistan that we've already accepted and what the future looks like. So US officials have said the evacuations will continue, meaning evacuations of US citizens. And 3 military bases in the United States are prepared to accommodate up to 22,000 evacuees, okay? As of July 31st, 2021, the US had only admitted a whopping 494 Afghan refugees for the fiscal year 2021, which ends September 30th. A year earlier, only 604 were resettled. By comparison, in 2016, during former President Barack Obama's final complete fiscal year in office, the US admitted more than 2,700 Afghan refugees. But again, guys, like I also don't want to give the Obama administration too much credit. We're the ones who created the crisis to begin with. We have the responsibility to deal with it, okay? When we're talking about millions of people who are suffering, when we're talking about people who are fleeing for safety because we created an unstable situation there, we have a responsibility to right our wrongs to the best of our ability. But I mean, look, to be fair, you look at the history of the United States and we failed to right our wrongs in so many different areas. I mean, genocide of Native Americans, slavery of African Americans, and the conversations that we have about righting our wrongs today center around banning critical race theory in elementary schools when it doesn't exist in elementary schools. That's America.
Don't even acknowledge it. These are not going to be the people that are going to care what happens to people in Afghanistan who are suffering, and it's very predictable. I wish that Joe Biden was stronger in the face of it. The word coming out from the White House that he's terrified of being criticized. Like he could take in one family from Afghanistan, they would do hundreds of days of coverage of it. So you just need to do the right thing. Like someone was mentioning in the chat, like, thanks to like Trump and Republicans, didn't we clear out like 500,000 people last year? We got room coming up every day, thanks to governors in places like Florida and Texas. 500-600 people dying needlessly every single day. Instead of talking to me about room and about replacement.
Yeah.
The whole thing is just so absurd. So 2 decades of needless suffering. And we figured out we're finally gonna pull out, but I think we can make it as bad as possible along the way.
Yeah, I mean, we're very good at bungling anything related to foreign policy.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, we really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.